What's up, YouTube? Tenchi, Arizonia, the angry Dracolope of the Jackalope crew here, and hang on a second, this isn't my channel, this is Nutjob with a Machete's channel. What am I doing here? Well folks, I'm telling y'all a story. And this story is actually based on a fishing spot that I first went to when I was 13 years old, and I went there with my grandfather. To let you know, I am 37 now, so yeah, quite a long time ago. The last time I went there, I was about 23 or 24. So, bit of groundwork before I get on with the story itself. This fishing spot, the place where you park to get to this fishing spot, takes about a half an hour to drive to from where I live here in the UK. However, once you've got to the spot where you park, you have to follow a game trail for about an hour to get to where the fishing spot is. On one side of this game trail, once you get to the fishing spot, is woodland, mainly big old oak trees. On the other side of the game trail, leading up to the riverbank itself, there's 15 yards of completely muddy, claggy ground. It's all clay-based soil, usually really muddy because the bank of the river is literally below the water level of the river, so it floods out most of the time. So me and my grandfather get to this fishing spot after about half an hour drive and a 1 hour walk, so 1.5 hours of travel. He takes a spot on the bend of the river. I take a spot about 50 yards down from him, and I start setting up my equipment. Well, it takes me about half an hour to get set up because my rods were all multi-part rods. I was using the 2 rod setup. One was a 3-part rod, the other was a 6-part rod. By the way, the 6-part rod was actually a gift from my grandfather for my 13th birthday, which is why I was using it. It's known as a stalker's rod. Anyway, I just got set up. And was just about to sit down, which had taken me about half an hour, when I heard from upstream a splash. And I'm like, wonder what's going on up there. So, thinking my grandfather had got into something like some pike or a perch or a big barbel or something, I went upstream. When I got up there, I found that he was actually on his ass in the river. I asked him what happened, and apparently something had tapped him on the shoulder. So I helped him out of his predicament on his ass in the river and looked at the back of his jacket. And on the back of his jacket was a muddy paw print around the size of a saucer. So if you know what a saucer is, you know what sort of size I'm talking about. And I told him there was a paw print on the back of his jacket on his shoulder. And he went, "Nah, lad, you're nuts. It's just mud from when I fell in the river." I'm like, and at this point, I'm like, whatever you say, Grandpa, I'm going back to my spot. So I went back to my spot, pondering this paw print on his friggin' jacket, because as I was going back to my spot, I looked at the ground. No tracks. None. Not a one. And I'll tell you now, this particular spot, never had any dog walkers. Never even had any hikers going through there. Which, to me now, looking back at it, seems a little bit sketchy. Well, as I came to find out, more than a little bit sketchy. So, the rest of me and my grandfather's fishing trip for that day went without incident. And After we packed up and we were heading back down the trail, I asked him again. I said to him again, Grandpa, you had a fucking paw print on your jacket. He said, no, it was just mud from where I fell in the river. I'm not going to discuss anything else about it until we get back to the car. And I thought that was kind of suspicious. Yeah, kind of suspicious. Turns out it was very suspicious because as soon as we got back to the car and put our fishing boxes and our rods away, he pulled me to the side, driver's side of his car, by the front door and said, look, I know it was a paw print. I know I said it wasn't, but I know it was a paw print. We don't discuss that here. You can ask me about it again when you're older. So, my granddad being in the military sort of thought, right, I'm not going to ask him about it again. I'm not going to get anything out of him. However, I made a decision then and there. I'm going to keep coming back to this spot and fishing until I find out what's going on. Oh, and heads up, I never did find out what was going on. I do have suspicions though. So I went back fishing there about every other week till I was around 20. Went there with a friend usually, sometimes alone. I always took the same spot 50 yards down from the bend because there was always someone at the bend. Every time I went there was a splash, and either on the back of their folding chair or the back of their jackets if they were using a seated tackle box like I used to use, there was a muddy paw print the size of a saucer. Every time, and these are all old timers, every time, nah lad, it's just mud. It's just mud from where I fell in the river, alright? No need to discuss it any further. So eventually, after hearing this time and time again, I decided to take friends of mine down there. A couple of friends in particular, actually. One of those friends, again, fished at the same spot, right on the bend of the river. Me 50 yards downstream, half an hour in, splash. Went up to investigate, back of his folding chair, because he didn't like using seat boxes. Back of his folding chair, big muddy paw print, size of a saucer. I told him what was on the back of his chair. He looked, went white as a sheet and just noped right out of there. I mean, literally didn't even take down his rod, just picked up everything and gone like the fucking wind. Now, I thought that was highly, highly irregular because this friend of mine is someone who used to go abseiling, rock climbing, all that sort of shit, and he just nopes right out of there without even packing his gear up on seeing this big saucer-sized paw print on the back of his chair. Bear in mind, he didn't even take his chair with me, he left the chair there, so I had to pack up the chair and basically carry it out with me. I was going to say log it out, I mean lag it out, lug it, there we go, lug it out with me. That's the word I was looking for. I kept going back there, couldn't get him to go back again. One of my other friends went with me though, on one occasion. Same thing happened. They sat up at the bend on the river. Half an hour in, splash, muddy paw print on the back of his jacket because this particular friend used a seat box. Nope, right the hell out of Dodge. I had to end up lugging out his seat box because he literally left his seat box and his rod behind, so I ended up lugging out 2 sets of fishing tackle that time. And at this point, I'm starting to think, like, what the hell is going on with this spot? Every time I bring someone here, every time they're on that bend, or every time someone comes here and is on that bend, there's a splash, they end up in the water, there's a paw print on the back of their jacket, or on their back of their folding chair. So at this point, I'm around 18 when I start to ask questions about it. So, because my grandfather said, ask about it when you're older. So I waited till I'm 18. I asked my grandfather about it. His only response is, I have no idea what you're talking about. What do you mean? We've never discussed anything of the sort. So at this point I'm like, right, my grandfather is stonewalling me. He's never done that before. Never ever. Not on any topic. So I'm like, right, my grandfather's stonewalling me. This is, something is going on here and it's something rather severe. So I had a thought to myself at the time when I was around 18, and I phoned up the local tackle shops, all run by old timers who had been fishing in the area for decades. Some of them up to 50 years experience fishing in the area. Every single one, bar one man, said, look, we do not discuss this area. There's something there. I don't want to talk about it. Don't bring it up ever again. If you bring it up again, I'm banning you from my shop. All except one guy had that same reaction towards being asked about it. Excuse me a minute while I turn my control back on. All except one guy. And this was the oldest known fisherman in the area. He'd been fishing that spot for around 50 years. And he actually still runs a tackle shop in this area to this day. And he said, look, I know what you're here for. I know what you want to ask about. Yes, there is some strange stuff going on at that spot. He wouldn't name the spot. He just goes, at that spot. Every fisherman in the area knows about it. They all know that there is something, some kind of mystery, something going on at that spot. Emphasis, that spot. So I ask him, well, what is going on at that spot? He goes, nobody knows exactly what's going on at that spot. They just know that something is going on, that throughout the years, everyone who has fished at that bend in the river has had a tap on the shoulder and found either a paw print on the back of their jacket or on folding seats that is the size of a saucer. I go, I know about that because I've seen it myself. What else can you tell me? He goes, if you ever go there again, and I'm advising that you don't go there again, but if you do, walk back towards the trail and look at some of the trees. And I immediately asked this man, what do you mean, look at the trees? He goes, look at the trees if you go there again. Not what I'm advising that you do. I don't want you to go back there again, but if you do go back there again, look at the trees, and when you come back, if nothing occurs while you're there, tell me what you saw. I'm like, okay, this is starting to freak me right the crap out, because what is he meaning if nothing occurs while I am there? It's like, this is getting kind of sketchy at this point. So, against his advice, I actually did go back there. Nothing occurred. Otherwise, I would not be making this story. Nothing occurred, but I did look at the trees. And there's this big oak tree directly in line with the bend of the river. It's about 4 feet around. And I was looking around the base of the trunk, didn't notice anything, no tracks, no nothing. So I looked up. Don't know what made me look up, but I looked up. About 10 feet up from the ground, there was a set of 4 diagonal gashes going down the bark of the tree. The bottom end of the gashes was 10 feet from the ground. The top end of the gashes was about 20 feet from the ground. I can tell you now, there is no way any creature could get to that height, 25 feet off the ground, because the nearest branches from the bottom of the tree to where these marks was, the nearest branches were another 10 feet above these scratches. So you're talking 35 feet off the ground. So upon seeing these scratches, I immediately got a fucking chill down my spine. I was like, yeah, I probably should not be here. And I, keeping my eyes on my surroundings, noped out of there and noticed that on every other tree, there was marks, same diagonal marks, as if something had been using them to jump up or down. because the marks were staggered. They weren't all at the same height. They were staggered going up the trees, every other tree. So, yeah, I noped the hell out of there at that point, and I went back to the guy at the store. I go, I know what you said, look at the trees now. I'm not going back to that spot again. I'm not ever going to ask what is there again. But one day I may or may not write a story about the events that I'd experienced there, or talk about the events at least. He said that was fine as long as I don't go back to that spot. So roll on about 10 years from when I last went there. Last time I went there was when I was 20. And actually that was literally the last time I went there, because I stopped getting a fishing licence from that point. Decided to stop fishing, freshwater fishing entirely. Despite the fact it's something I really enjoy doing, I just couldn't afford the fishing licences and the day permits for fishing anymore. And I didn't really want to go back to that spot again anyway. So, as I said, the last time I went there was when I was 20, and I only went to the head of the trail, because as soon as I got to the head of the trail, I just felt a sense of foreboding. I couldn't move past the head of the trail. As soon as I actually got to the head of the trail, I felt cold all over, and I just had to get the hell out of there. And that leads us to now. So, what do I think is there? What do I think is there? Well, the first thing I need to point out to you is every time I went there, I looked for tracks in the mud between the trail and the bank, and there was never any tracks. Never ever. Not once. And that struck me as unusual. So what do I think is there? Do I think it's a spirit? No, I don't think it's a spirit. I think it's something else. I don't know what exactly, but I have a few theories of what it could be. It could be a large cat. But there are no large cats known to be in the UK, so I don't think that's quite accurate. And based on the paw prints I saw on the jackets and backs of chairs of various fishermen, and my friends and my grandfather included, I'm going to say definitely not a bloody cat. I know what a cat paw looks like. I've had cats all my life. Could it be one of those black dog things that are talked about in a lot of British legends, most famously Hound of the Baskervilles? No, I don't. Which only leaves two things really. One, which you do not find on this side of the Atlantic, specifically in the UK, which is skinwalkers. So I don't think it's one of those. Although I have been told that incidents have increased in that area. So that only leaves really one option that is very popular in the mythology of Europe and of the whole world in point of fact, which is a werewolf, or possibly the French variation of the werewolf, because we do have quite a lot of travel back from UK to France even back then, which is the loup-garou. Why do I think it's one of those two creatures? Well, for the simple reason that the only things that could jump the way I've seen the marks indicating on the trees, and the only ones that could get in and out of an area without leaving any tracks. Anyway, that's my story. Hopefully you enjoyed it. I just gave you a few theories at the end to tell you what I thought it could be, though I am not sure, and I'm not going back there to find out. So let's just leave it at that. Anyway, hopefully you enjoyed this story. Back to you, Nutjob.